Phil is a liar. I will just say that.
The groundhog.
Yes.
I gotta take that one on the chin. He's a Pennsylvania resident, so
yeah,
it's my bad. It's my bad.
Just tell Phil he's a liar. Mm-hmm. But I also have to talk to Jimmy in Sun Prairie. He's only about 10 minutes away. Jimmy in Sun Prairie is also a liar this year. That's all I'm saying.
I didn't know you guys had one too.
Yeah, Jimmy the groundhog in Sun Prairie. He was naughty a few years back, bro. He bit somebody in the ear, the mayor and everything.
Good for him.
He bit the mayor in the ear, bro.
That's right. My favorite term this week is be ungovernable.
Yeah, Jimmy bit the mayor in the ear, bro. He was on timeout for a couple of days.
Hey, go Jimmy.
Till the next season. They're like, put Jimmy away.
It's like
till next spring. They
like,
put Jimmy on timeout.
Me up in the middle of winter to do what? Somebody catching these hands. Somebody's catching these little groundhog hands today.
Oh, I can't think of a better way to start the podcast. Welcome to the Bird Joy Podcast. I'm Dexter Patterson.
And I'm Jason Hall. This podcast is for all the bird nerds around the globe, a loving and joyful and happy place where you can come to find some of that bird joy.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Yes. So if you came here and you're listening today, hopefully you are ready for some bird joy. You ready, bro?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's go. So last week we were really we dived into that why. You know, I feel like life in general, birding, we kind of got to start with the why. Why should we do this? Why birding? That appeal of birding as a hobby, all its various benefits. And that was a fun conversation.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. And now I think we're gonna hit people with the how. How can you go get into it? What can you do practically? And I'm really excited to get some of this out there and hopefully create some new bird nerds this spring.
Yes, you know, sometimes you want to be a birder, you want to go birding. We talked a little bit about that last week. Just paying attention is birding, but maybe you want to take it to another notch up, just a little bit. And there may be some basic equipment and some tools that you might need, like binoculars. Maybe field guide, maybe birding apps.
Yeah, birding apps.
You know, maybe you want to. We start talking about a little bit of that kind of stuff. How do you identify birds? You know, maybe some tips on how we identify birds, whether it's their shape or how we pay attention to color patterns and behaviors and listening to them, right? They make a lot of noise. So listening to for vocalizations, different habitats and seasons, right? Right now it's early spring and everybody gets excited and like, well, why do we get excited, Jason, for early spring? What's happening right now? There are a lot of different things that are happening. Like talking about those things, dive into that, because I think if we can arm people with that type of information, they go out into the field and maybe it's not so scary out there.
Yeah. So where should we start? Let's think. We got a bunch of homies out there, and let's imagine that one of them is listening to the pod. They hit episode 1 and 2 and they're like, all right, enough of the talk. It's time for business. I need to go birding, like proper birding. What do we start with? I think we've covered before just the mental approach of having curiosity is really a great place to start. We've covered starting in your own community, but let's talk about a little bit how that happens. One of the first things I would tell people to do, and this is even before getting a pair of binoculars, is to get familiar with the spaces around your community where you could find birds. You know, this is your local parks, your local maybe gardens, arboretums, refuges. If you have a wildlife refuge, you know, near you, just get familiar with where they are. Maybe pay them a little drive through, a little visit, go for a little walk. And this serves two purposes, right? One is starts to give you what we call a patch, which is those green spaces around your community. If someone says, hey, you know, for the first time ever, I saw a yellow-throated warbler in my patch. That's usually their local community, right? We would call it our neighborhood, block, really what represents those spaces around us. So get familiar with that. And so just knowing where that is, it gives you a general sense of safety and familiarity so that when you're there birding, you only need to focus on the birds, right? Because you know that community, you know that space. So that would be a place where I would start.
I love it. A lot of times people are like, wait, yes, I want to go birding. Where should I go birding? And I love that you say, all right, let's focus on where you should go first. And hopefully you can do that with a community as you're first getting going. And both of us leading birding clubs, I think this is something that we intimately care about, is those initial experiences, making sure that they're inclusive, they're welcoming, they're fun, the pressure is taken off of you and you're just there enjoying the birds. And I think I love kind of starting with finding your birding spots as a great starting point for everybody. And that is, I love that you mentioned that, because I think back to when I first started going birding, it was that, like, where do I go? And it was so cool. And we talked about last episode, these windows to the wonder. I remember finding myself going to all these places in my community that I had no clue exist. And that was kind of cool for me. It wasn't just the birds that I was seeing. It was like, wow, I had no clue that all these different areas to see birds were around me this whole time. It kind of like, it kind of amplified the bird joy, I would say. It's just like, because I was like, wow, this is really cool. I have some amazing places around me to explore. I found a lot of those places, whether it was going out with people that I knew in the community already. You talked about that, but I was a part of like some Facebook groups, and people will be posting birds and putting locations. And I'd be like, oh, what is this place? I've never been there. Right. And I remember finding myself like, wow, that's how I found some of these places. eBird as well was a really cool tool, because like, especially when you're early on, you have like what they'll call targets. Yeah. In eBird, you have 5 targets in your county right now. Like getting all excited, like, well, but I've never been to this place. Where is this target? Yeah. Ooh, that's another new place. That, and going out with people already with birding clubs and people that are creating spaces for people to go see birds was super helpful for me to start finding locations. And I think once you are able to find some locations, it not only is it exciting, but you kind of have a little bit of direction on how to get started. I'm going to go to this local park. I'm going to check out this conservancy that is near me. Or maybe I'm going to go check out this place that I've never been with this group of people, because they're already going. Yeah. They're already going. And they tell me I'm welcome to tag along. I think that is a great way to get started as a beginner.
Yeah, for sure. And like that, you can't discount the idea of building the community aspect into how you start birding. Not only from a safety standpoint, but just from a familiarity standpoint. You create friends, you get perspectives that are slightly different. And I know you and I love that.
I think it's a great way, because you feel like you belong, because you're like, well, there are a lot of people that are at my level right now. There are a lot of beginners here, and there are people here that are a little bit more knowledgeable. There are some people that have a lot more knowledge. There are a few people that have a little more knowledge than probably everybody out here. So you kind of have access to every level of knowledge that you need. I think that's important, because not everybody wants the same information. And I think I love this about our groups, and I'm sure you feel this way sometimes, is you just kind of hear these pockets of conversation, and they're at different levels. And people come to the events, and there are a lot of beginning birders. There are people that have never been birding before. There are intermediate level birders. There are people that bird all the time. And there are all these little pockets of conversation happening throughout the event that I find just really kind of joyful, in the sense of it's all about the birds. And no matter the level, all those questions matter. All those conversations matter. And I really get excited about hearing about that stuff. Show up and understand that your level and your expertise of birding, none of that matters. None of that matters when you're getting started. It doesn't matter. Just show up.
Yeah, that's right. And we had a bird walk this morning, and we had the same thing happen. It was cold. We had a lot of beginner birders. We had people where it was their absolute first time birding. We had people who had only been birding since the fall, so they've never experienced the spring migration, and they're just itching. They're like, what is about to happen? And we have some really experienced birders, right? We had a gentleman at the Arboretum we were at who was retired, and he leads the bird walks there, and he was kind of our ambassador to the space. You could tell he knew a lot, right? And he was talking with some of our more experienced birders about different things they've seen over the years. I think the cool part about those outings when you go with communities, if it's the right kind of bird club where they are accepting of different levels of conversation, it's just a great place to learn. And if everyone understands, like, hey, you may be talking about two different types of red crossbill calls, right? And if you haven't looked that up yet, there's this cool little finch bird with their bill is crossed at the end, right? And they have these different distinct calls, and it's quite complex. I have no idea how to distinguish them myself. But if you hear them talking about it, if it's the right kind of community, they'll stop and explain it to you. And you'll be like, yo, that's dope. Number one, this bird looks ridiculous because its bill is crossed. Number two, the fact that they have these very specific calls that people mostly identify them by when they're flying over. Like that's really cool stuff. And all of that, I think, creates a really good foundation, right? Knowing your space, knowing your patch, and trying to create community as you get started. The next thing I would want to talk to people about is getting some binoculars. Right. And I would say, I usually tell people don't spend more than $100, $150 on your first pair of binoculars. Unless you have just tons of disposable income and you know for a fact that birding is going to be a part of your life forever, I wouldn't go out and spend too much more than that. You can get a nice pair of Celestrons on many online stores. You can get a pair of Knox Pro Visions. If you want those, they are pretty awesome. What do people need to know when they're going to look at binoculars? How do they know what's going to work for them? What do all these numbers mean? 8 by 42, 10 by 42, 12 by 50, all this crazy stuff. What do they need to know, Dex? What do you tell folks?
I think this is also a benefit of that community portion, showing up at a place where maybe it is an organization that's leading monthly walks in your community. I would say a lot of times that will include these organizations. I don't know, In Color Birding Club, Your Birding Club, our birding club here in Wisconsin, the BIPOC Birding Club of Wisconsin. We have binoculars, and we offer binoculars to anybody that may not have them, and we will also show you how to use them. I think that is also that's a benefit of community, because maybe you don't know where to start. Yeah. And you can show up, and we have some 8 by 32s. We have some 10 by 42s. We have the little ones some little Knox for the little kids.
For the babies.
That's right. We have some smaller ones. You can get some experience, some real life experience using some of this equipment. And this is very common, and I don't think this is unique to our birding club. Most birding clubs, if you show up, they have binoculars.
Most of them do. That's right.
I would say most.
Most of them do.
It'd be pretty rare that they don't. Showing up and being able to use or borrow equipment if it's out of your budget, or you don't know what type of equipment that you need, use some. Use some and like, hey, these actually worked really good for me. And that's a great start, because it's like, oh, wow, I used some 10 by 42 binoculars this entire time and they worked really well. Or I had the 8 by 32s and they worked really well.
Yeah.
I really like this. Oh, I tried a monocular today. I thought the monocular was for me. Trying out different stuff, I think that is also an appeal to community and organized birding as a whole. It's a lot of times you have resources at your disposal if you don't have any, or people to show you how to use that stuff.
Yeah, and I think you get a chance to test it out, right? And you see to yourself, okay, so I used the 10 by 42 and I really liked it. What does that mean, right? Okay, so the 10 by 42, that means that it magnifies 10 times what your naked eye can see. And 42 is the millimeters across your field of vision that you can see. So if you have 10 by 42s, you get 10 times magnification and your field of view is 42 millimeters, which is pretty wide. If you get 8 by 32s, you have 8 times magnification and just a little bit less field of view. But 8 by 32s are lighter and easily to carry, right? 10 by 42s start to get a little heavy depending on what you get. Giving people a chance to check that out and find out what works for themselves. I think you and I have both been in circls where people come straight off the top rope with like, oh, let's go, check out these $4,000 Swarovski, NLs. And like I said, that's cool if you got the funding for it and you want to make that purchase. But if you've never used binoculars before, you need to slow down before you get into that piece, because they may not be the pair that you like the most. They may not be what you want. So, giving people a chance to just kind of start at the basics is really great. And a lot of the libraries, I know in Philly, we have this at the Free Library of Philadelphia, is these birding book bags that you can check out that have binoculars in them and you can try them out. So definitely would suggest folks, if they can't find them with their local bird club, to see if there's other opportunities at libraries or otherwise to borrow a pair.
Yeah, I love the birding backpack programs. I know our friends at the Feminist Bird Club do that. We're starting a little backpack program in the Milwaukee area as well as in Madison. Our bags came in. They're freaking adorable. They're little osprey bags.
Hey.
I'm really excited about
I wonder
that.
who picked the osprey. I wonder who did that.
Yeah, I was like, what was really cool is we partner with a local company, Fontana, that does like
dope.
sporting goods stuff. And their CEO picked this stuff out for us.
Oh, that's dope.
Told us that, hey, these are the best ones for you all. We think these would be great for your bags. And they show up and they're osprey. And I was like, go figure. I was like, this is so meant to be.
Serendipitous.
Yeah, it was
Stars are aligning.
amazing. Maybe you do kind of want to venture out by yourself. I just say grab a pair that's within your budget. Don't worry about the price when you're first starting out. You're going to get value out of that. And then if you feel like this is for me and you're going to do this for a while, you can get some experience and you'll be able to get to a point where you can discuss, all right, maybe I'm going to invest into a higher priced item here, but don't let that price or thinking that equipment as a whole is like this. You need all this equipment to get started. I just want people to understand that there are yes, you need to have all these things to get going. There are some starting points and it could be, yes, I'm gonna borrow some stuff for a little while until I figure out what I need. Or, hey, I got $50, I got $100. I'm gonna go out and find a pair of binoculars that work for me. Make those binoculars work for you for a little while and understand that they're perfectly okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And really, as you upgrade your gear, those are things that are made to make it easier as you go, but it doesn't really have any bearing on developing your skill set, I think, as a birder, especially as a beginning birder. Our homie out there somewhere, they have explored their local community a little bit. They have found a bird club to hang out with. They got a pair of binoculars to borrow, and now they're out there and they're birding. What else should they know? What should we be talking to them about as they move forward at this point?
I would say if you're really kind of curious and now, I got binoculars, I'm going out, you're a birder. You know, this is a part of you now.
You're in it
now you're curious, and I always say birders are always going to be lifelong learners.
That's right.
And if you're out birding, you're always going to be learning. So then this is maybe where you start thinking about a field guide or other tools, maybe some birding apps when you're out there that kind of aid your learning process as you're out there and you get eyes on something and you see something in the binoculars, but you haven't seen it before. How are you going to identify this? How are you going to figure out what you're looking at? And I think field guides and birding apps like Merlin are a good next step. So I would say let's talk a little bit about field guides, because I think when I first started going out, or even when I go to new areas, I always find myself breaking out the field guide. I kind of go back to the field guide. So if you're trying to learn, I think a good field guide, Sibley, Kaufman, either one, I think would be a good way to go.
Number one, look for used field guides on anywhere you're looking. There's a lot of bookstores out there that sell them. I particularly enjoy David Sibley's guide, the Sibley Guide to Birds. It's a little heavy. I don't carry it around with me out in the field. It's a really good guide because everything is drawn by Mr. Sibley, and it's able to call out some of these minute details that you can't always see in every photo because of lighting and shadows and, coloration and all that kind of stuff. So it allows you to get a good sense of things. Like you said, the Kaufman guide is great as well. It has some great photos in that one. But I would encourage people to explore a little bit. So what they do sell also in certain regions are field guides for your region. You can almost guarantee whatever state you live in or municipality, province, country, there's probably a smaller field guide specific to that region. And I would definitely Google those, look for those. But you really want to crack them open as you get them and see if it's able to be navigated by you. And a lot of people, what happens with field guides is they buy them and they jump straight to the birds, and they end up having to keep jumping back to the beginning stuff to figure out, what does purple on the map mean? What does blue on the map mean? they said this bird has a white supercilium. What is a supercilium, right? So one piece of advice I like to give people is the bird guy is awesome. Crack it open, explore it, but take a little bit of time to get used to those first. It's usually the preamble or the preface to the actual chapters of birds is explains how to use the guide. What does it mean on the page if it has a little red dot? What does it mean when they talk about the primaries on gulls or P8 and P9? You're like, what does that mean? So just, you don't have to memorize it. I don't want people to do that, but I want them to just get familiar with it. Just get a cup of coffee one morning and spend an hour just paging through those first pages and understanding, so that when you are out identifying birds, you're understanding what you're seeing on the page, and it gets you quicker to an identification of the bird that you're looking at.
You stress, be patient, and sticking with something. I think sometimes the best tool is just being able to get the most out of the tool.
Yeah.
And people always are asking me, well, what kind of camera should I have? Or what kind of binoculars? I'm like, these are tools. Honestly, you'll get what you need out of these tools. And at some point, if you need to find new ones, you will. Yeah. And I think be patient with yourself. That's really important. Sticking with something is going to get you a little more comfortable with it. You're going to start to build skills and confidence, because now you are just going to always tell people one bird, one call at a time. So if you ID one and you're like, oh, I'm not sure what that was. And then you go back and like you said, you're kind of paying attention to birds in your area. Maybe you're using a field guide that is specific to just your area. And now you're able to locate what you saw. And you're like, yep, that's it. That's what I saw. And you ID that bird, you get this confidence. And it's really cool because it makes you want to find the next one. And you're just kind of building it up. It's like, yep. That checklist vibe, you start getting that. And I would say don't always be list driven, but it can feel good when you start to check off these birds on your list. Maybe you start entering into the world of lifers. I got a lifer today. I will tell you this, last night we had our woodcock walk last night. It was really cool because there were a bunch of people that got their lifer timber doodle last night. And there's something about that. Like seeing people get excited, whether we had a pileated flyover. We start the event. We had about an hour, because when you go out for the woodcock walk, obviously it's a different time frame than our typical birding event. And so we start 6:30 Central Time, and the sun's not really going down till like 7:30. So you get like an hour with the light, and we start the walk on the trail, and we have the pileated flyover, and that was a lifer for a bunch of people, and it was really cool to kind of see them when they fly over. They show their size, man, and you're like, whoa, that's a woodpecker. That's a big old woodpecker.
Just a tank of a bird.
The largest woodpecker in North America, by the way. So that, and then it's so crazy. You mentioned rusty blackbirds. You remember I texted you.
That's right.
A couple images of the rusty blackbirds. We saw some rusty blackbirds last night, which was really cool. So that was another bird that was lifers for people. But then the American woodcock at the end of the night was just, they were putting on a crazy show. Like the little homie jumped into the path, bro. We talk about bird nerd moment of the week.
I'm done.
Yes, bird nerd moment of the week. It's back. It's not going anywhere now. All right. So the little homie literally just jumps in the middle of the path of the trail that we walked up. So everybody is seeing this American woodcock. He's like 15 feet away, painting like crazy. Right on the path in the open. Everybody can see him. Obviously it's darker. It's nighttime, but it's still, he's right there. And like everybody can see him. And then he takes off. And he comes back down. He lands in the middle of the field, starts painting again. They're kind of painting all over the place. But then all of a sudden, another one pops up on the other side of the trail. So not only once did it happened twice in front of all these people in our club. And I said, I promise you, this is not normal.
It is not normal.
And I was like, I don't know why, but these type of things happen at our events a lot. And I was like, all these people here, and there's we have witnesses all the time. And they're all talking about like these miracle bird moments that happen at our events. And I think it's the vibe.
That's right. That's right. You're putting that good birding juju out into the world, that good community juju.
They feel all that bird joy, and they're like, they're like flying, like they got males chasing other male birds off. We're getting flyovers of all these different. I'm like, this is crazy. This is so cool. Welcome to the BIPOC. I'm going to text you a video from last night where I'm nerding out
at
this timber doodle on the trail, bro, and I'm just like nerding out, and somebody's recording it, and they got me in the background just nerding out. I'm gonna send you the text with it. It's hilarious.
Send me that.
It's hilarious.
That's great. That's great.
What was your bird nerd moment of the week?
Oh man, today actually we had it. Like I said, we had a bird walk at a spot in the greater Philadelphia area, and we had a nesting great horned owl. And the bird nerd moment wasn't necessarily the owl. Obviously, we talked about owls, right? It's in episode 2, I think. Love them. It was watching all the people that never seen an owl in the wild. Bro, like if I could bottle that and sell it, I would be a billionaire. Just watching the smiles, like, because people can't help it. They're just, that female owl looks over the edge of the nest at you, and you can see just get this stupid grin on their face. They're high-fiving their friends in the background. There's a lot of oohs and ahs, and especially when they're looking at it through the scope, because it's close and it's intimate and we're far enough away, we're not bothering the bird. That was my bird nerd moment of the week. Is just, number one, having a moment to talk with people about the ethical viewing of owls and the approach, everybody being on the same page, and then getting that reward before we went to go see the owl, and just like people having that payoff of knowing that there's an owl coming up, they're going to see it, and they're with the right group of people to do it ethically. So there's nothing for them to worry about. And then they see it, and I could tell all of them were like, I can't wait to tell my Nana. I can't wait to show my cat when I get home. I can't wait to, like, people were just losing their mind. And it's funny.
I love it. I love it.
All the other guides, we were all kind of just standing to the side. Once we set the scopes up, we all just backed off and let the lines form. And you just watch that bird joy. Just like, if I put on a special set of goggles, I'll just see bird joy emanating from everybody's body, like they're all celestial beings,
That's the same thing that we were doing last night. Like, we're literally looking at all these people just freaking out over the American woodcock. And we're talking about these basic tools. And before every walk, we'll ask people, all right, who needs binoculars? Anybody want a field guide? We'll talk about Merlin. We'll let people know, hey, you might see people looking at their phone. What are they using? And we'll talk about that. And last night, this never gets old. We're nerding out about all the bird joy, but then the person comes up to me and they're like, look, it's on my app. And I don't care what anybody says. That gets me excited because they're like hearing pink. And they're like, look. And then they see it says infrequent. So then they're like, oh, this bird's not supposed to be here. I was like, well, it's a little early, right? Like, it's a little early but they're here. Like, some of them are starting to show up. They're like, look, it's right there. It is. It's the American woodcock. Those moments right there. I love that stuff. Like, I love when people do that and like have that moment with them and be like, yes, it is so cool. And I'm like, I'm geeking out just like they are.
Of course.
They're like, well, haven't you seen this bird like a lot? I'm like, yes. And every single time I see it, I get this excited because it's that cool.
Yeah. And now what you've done is you've set an expectation, which is something that we haven't talked about, is like, be excited when you bird. Right? Like, the whole point of getting into the right community and knowing your spaces and having the tools in terms of, binoculars, is that so you can be in the moment. You can enjoy the bird for being the bird. You're not worried about where you are or who you're with. You're just, oh my goodness, there's a woodcock, which looks like nature's version of a chicken nugget, sitting on the trail, making this ridiculous painting noise. That is beautiful, right? And you mentioned Merlin. And for folks that don't know, Merlin is an app by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And it allows you to record bird sounds in your area. And it'll tell you what they are, usually at a pretty good rate of accuracy. It also allows you to try to figure out what kind of birds you have based on where you live. Let's talk a little bit about the tools that people can use in terms of technology. Now that they are out there, they have a space to go to, they have maybe a set of binoculars, they're finding bird joy. What's that next step in terms of tool?
Yeah, because you're going to want those tools to start identifying birds.
Yeah.
So I think having some tools and some practical tips to go along with those tools and helping you identify common birds is a logical next step. And we saw that And I love having like these real world examples, because we saw that with the American woodcock last night, where first you start to observe size and shape, and you start noticing these birds flying around, and it's like, wait, that's not a mourning dove. Like, what is this, the bird flying around? So we start talking about, I noticed that's the first questions that start coming up is like, that what was that? That looks different. That's shaped different than any bird I've seen before. So that's kind of like this first step is, yes, that's important. Let's start to observe size and shape, thinking about body proportions and tail length and bill shape and all these different key identifiers, because when you start seeing birds, you can start asking yourself, was it the shape of a robin, the size of a robin, or was it more like a chickadee, or was it the size of a crow, which is really big, or an owl, like you mentioned. So kind of starting with that and having tools like field guides, but also the Merlin app is important, because if you are able to get pictures, you can upload pictures and they can offer suggestions to you, depending on how clear your picture is, potential birds you may be seeing at the time. And it's really cool, because once you start to observe size and shape, then you start paying attention to things like color patterns on the bird's plumage and markings on the head or the wings or the back or the belly, you know, all these different things. And then you start thinking about behavior. And I found myself explaining the behavior of the woodcock last night. And when you start to hear the painting, I was like, it starts there. But then eventually, as it gets a little darker and darker, we're going to start to hear those feathers, right? The rustling of those feathers and these high pitched noises as they're starting to shoot into the air to do their sky dances. I found myself being able to explain behavior. And that's a logical step in listening, those vocalizations, and whether it's the paint, you know I talked about that last night, but to hear it in the flesh last night, and they were painting like crazy, those vocalizations, but also the sound when they take off into the air, those whistling sounds that you hear was really, really cool. And to be able to talk about not only that habitat, this open prairie type area that they like, and a lot of these habitats are threatened, you know, when we're thinking about habitat loss and different things, these prairie habitats that are here in the season, they're here a little earlier in the spring and they start painting, but they also start to nest a little earlier than some birds on the ground in April. We're a couple weeks away from them actually starting to get into nesting, which is kind of cool. So that seems to be the next logical step, is like you have your binoculars, you're maybe using a field guide, you maybe downloaded Merlin, and now you're trying to identify these birds that you're seeing or hearing around you. And I think that's kind of cool. Identifying birds and taking that time to learn each bird one bird at a time. You're not going to know them all, but that seems like a logical step. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great step. And I just to summarize for folks here, right? So when you're out there, you have a few different ways to help you identify birds. You have the community you're with, right? And people that want to help you. You have a field guide, which you familiarize yourself with in terms of just how to understand what's on the page. And now you have the Merlin app. And Dexter mentioned not only the sound identification, but the photo identification. Another cool thing Merlin does, it'll actually let you run through a checklist. Like you said, is it the size of a robin? Is it the size of a crow? What kind of colors did you see on it? What time of year was it? Where are you located? And it'll give you a list of probable birds. That is really helpful because it allows you to start thinking like that, right? And I certainly encourage folks not to bypass that function of the app, because it makes you slow down a little bit and say, well, how big was it really? If you can't take a picture close enough, that's good enough to upload, right? Or maybe you can't, it's not making any noise. Just write down somewhere or type a little note on your phone on what you're seeing while you're looking at it. And then that'll help you on the Merlin app or in your field guide, go and try to figure out what kind of bird it is. I remember when I first started birding, in terms of publicly and like putting like pictures on Facebook and stuff, I didn't know a lot. And I was out in Idaho at some family's place, and I had gone on a little drive and I took a picture of a bird and I put it on Facebook, and I was like, I think this is a Caspian tern. It was not a Caspian tern. It was a black-crowned night heron. Two totally different birds, right? Yeah. But in my head, what happened was I was in such a rush to identify the bird based on the photo that the first thing that looked close in the bird guide, I got so excited about it. Now that's what I labeled it as, right? And it was just because of the black cap. That was it. That was the only thing really, other than, a few white feathers here and there, but it was just a black cat. And I remember somebody on Facebook just clowned me just judiciously, right? And I didn't like it, and they didn't really need to. It was one of those things I'll never forget, because outside of someone just being rude to me on Facebook, which happens, it reminded me I needed to slow down and really pay more attention to the details.
That's one of the nice benefits of birding, is kind of living in the moment. And I would say I love that you mentioned that, because I found it valuable when I first started to take notes. And I'm terrible at drawing, but doing little sketches of different things and kind of keeping this birding journal and recording observations to learn. I'm a visual learner myself. I would include these different descriptions and write down all these little encounters that I would have, and it helped me grow. It helped me remember different things. It helped me be able to identify birds to other people. Like I would always say, another part of community as you're starting to learn is you can ask a more experienced birder. And I used to love this, because the co-founder of our club, Dr. Jeff Galligan, was my bird guy. So like when I was a beginner and I was trying to figure stuff out, I was always sending him pictures, or I was sending him descriptions, and he would help me like get through that. So I would say, find your bird person. I think that's really important part, is like, trust me, like if they're a true bird nerd, they're going to love that like you're paying attention and you're like trying to learn all these new birds. Send them to me. I would love to hear about all the cool new birds that you're seeing. I will be your bird guy and be like, yep, that's this, or I think this is it, or I don't know what that is. This is exciting. Find your bird person, because I think that would be really, really cool. Write down some stuff, keep a journal, find you a bird person.
And before we move on to the next topic, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, like, don't be afraid of getting stuff wrong.
Yes.
Like that's a real barrier, I think, to new birders, is they don't want to speak up, whether it's posting your picture or, trying to ID a bird when you're out with a bunch of folks. Speak up, take the shot, right? To me, it's no different than shooting a basketball and just bricking heroically, just boing off the thing and just no chance of that shot. That's fine. You took the shot. Take the shot. Because you'll find more times than not, even if you do get corrected and it's something different, you learn something. You learned why it's not the bird you thought it was. And that's the nugget that you want to take out of that situation. And so even if you're not doing it publicly and you're just at home looking at the pictures you took and you think, oh, this is this or this is that, right? Just practice doing it. Practice is one of the things that is necessary. And a lot of people don't want to do it in front of folks because they're afraid to get things wrong, because some of the culture historically in the birding community has been quite judgmental. But that's why we asked you up front, start to build a good birding community and find that right organization that treats you with respect and wants you to come in and learn.
No, I think that's a great segue into, I think a logical next phase is understanding that there will be challenges. You can have all the tools. You can understand, you have your field guide, you have your binoculars, you have your bird person, and you're going to get stuff wrong. Like you mentioned, and that's okay. Give yourself some grace and understand that you're learning something new, and you will not have all the answers. You just won't. You're going to get some bird IDs wrong. You're going to be like, what is happening? I don't understand that behavior. You're going to be like, I can't find it. I hear it. I don't see it. You're going to have trouble locating birds in the field. You're going to have different life experiences than a lot of people. And that might impact, that might be a challenge for you getting into birding, or how you feel out birding, or whatever it may be. So the life experiences could be different, and that could be a challenge for you. You could be differently able. That could be a challenge for you. There are a lot of different things, and I want people to understand that like it won't be perfect. We can talk a little bit about some of the challenges I think that beginner birders will face.
It's the perfect place, I think, to really use the golden rule, treat others the way you would want to be treated. For me, I find pride in the fact that when I'm out birding with a group and there's someone that is, let's say, differently abled than I am, I take that extra time to make sure I'm understanding whether or not they're getting the most out of this experience as they possibly can. I may pay a little bit more attention to them, make sure they have everything they need. We ask up front when folks RSVP, right? Are there any accessibility needs that you have? Because I know what it's like as a Black man in America to feel left out, to feel looked over. And so why not take that knowledge that I've had myself and use it for good in that moment when there's someone that's different than me, right? Because we all have these places we come from. And so, you can say maybe on a larger scale in terms of being able to maybe physically recognize someone's ability to do something versus these smaller, more subtle things. Language, right? What if someone didn't grow up with English as their first language and you're doing a bird walk in the United States? Social understanding, of social norms when you're with a group of people, right? Different cultures have different social norms, especially with birding, right? Because everybody thinks you got to be all hush hush and like hiding in a bush all the time. Like, you don't have to do that. So trying to create a place where people can be comfortable for that. I think also just in general for Black and brown folks, birding is at this point still mostly a activity of old white men. Asking someone who grew up not in that kind of environment to go into that kind of environment and feel comfortable looking at birds is tough. So I implore all of our allies, especially old white men, to think about that perspective. So when you say something very simply, oh, you should get a pair of these Swarovskis, they're really nice. Or, oh,
let me hold a couple dollars.
Yeah, right. Or they say, oh, that's just a house sparrow, or that's just a robin. It's not just anything. This may be this person's first time actually having any intimate connection or acknowledgement of these birds in their own community. So, like you said, where people come from makes a difference. And they're coming into birding with the expectation, they should come into birding with the expectation that their needs are going to be met. They're at the very minimum going to be welcomed. They're going to be helped if they're beginners. And like you said, it's not all perfect, but there is a basic way that I think we should be treating each other, because the birding is going to be hard enough as you get through it, right? As you start to branch out and, maybe it's your first spring migration and there's just warblers everywhere and you have no idea what's going on. It is so much easier for a person to tackle that challenge and feel good about it if everything else around them is safe and joyful and supported. So,
yep.
It's really key for folks, no matter who you are not everyone. So there was always going to be someone that has a different perspective than you. And we always have time to consider that when we're out birding with one another.
Love it. You are not everyone, but birding is for everyone.
That's right. Ooh,
I love it.
We might have to do a spin-off podcast.
Yeah, we might have some.
That's good. Put it on a t-shirt. Put it on a t-shirt.
I love it. Dude, we've kind of addressed this at a lot of different levels. And I think once you're getting started, we gave you a lot to chew on. Let's give them a little more to chew on. Or we're thinking about some resources. Community's been a big one. Are there any online resources, books, workshops, different things that you think beginners should be checking out or being aware of? I think there's just so much out there. Just understand that there's a little something that for everybody out there, but any that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I would tell folks, go out and explore a few different places. One, I would start with the American Bird Conservancy. If you go to their website, they have some really cool stuff there. Just do a little reading. eBird. We were talking about how the Merlin app on your phone will help you decide what the birds are. And one of those factors is where it's located and what time of year. Well, they get that data from eBird. And eBird is a free service also by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. When we see birds, us birders, a lot of us log those sightings into eBird. So now you as a beginner birder, you go and you say, well, it's March at the, what's out by you? The Horicon National Wildlife Refuge. And I see that last March, Dexter logged all these different birds here. So I'm going to go there and see if they're there at that time. And you can see not only Dexter, but everybody else that logged birds there. And it'll tell you what the likelihood is. You'll see these little bar charts that you can look at. So American Bird Conservancy is great because it gives you a sense of the fact that there are people out there spending time and money to take care of these species that you're going to the marsh to see. eBird gives you the data. I would obviously listen to our podcast. So there's a couple other podcasts out there that you could go check out as well. I'm not going to tell you which ones because you got to find the ones that are right for you. But I think in the end, you can always look for your local birding clubs. So I know there's a lot of organizations around the country that are popping up. Well, I know in Chicago, there's a BIPOC bird club in Chicago starting. I think Detroit starting one. Obviously, Philly, we have In Color, and Wisconsin has the BIPOC birding club of Wisconsin. There's Oxnard Birders Club out in California. If you find any organizations called Bird Alliance, that's really cool too, because most of those are formerly known as Audubon organizations, and they've correctly changed their name to get rid of the moniker for the racist John James Audubon. So those are likely good steps.
Shout out
explore.
to the Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance.
Love it. Love it. And there seems to be a new one every month that finally changes the name. So yeah, those are just some general resources I would give people to look at. You cannot go wrong with the old Google machine.
I love starting local though. Tapping in, I think that string of community is strong again. Jeff, our co-founder, he teaches a birding 101 course. He actually partners with the local chapter, the Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance, to teach that. He's been doing that for 3 years now, teaching a birding 101 course every spring, which is kind of cool because that is kind of like peak. Like when you get into birding and you get your first spring migration, I think spring migration as a whole, people are the most excited. Yeah. So I think it's really cool that he literally teaches that class 4 weeks, every week of April, every year.
Wow.
And it's free and people are getting a ton there. Cornell, so many excellent online resources. You talked about them, but finding it at that local level, I think is really cool because you get to connect, but I think you'll get more learning and the opportunity to grow because you'll probably find other people in similar situation as you, and you all can kind of grow together. Yeah. I just want to remind people, just be patient. Give yourself some grace, understand, focus on one little bird at a time, one little sound at a time, one little behavior that you notice at a time, one location at a time, and just kind of ease yourself in and understand. Show up as you are. Show up to these spaces. I think that's really important. Show up as you are and enjoy them however you choose to enjoy them. And that probably will evolve and change over time, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's totally okay. And I want to just give a little example of what I'm talking about, or what you're talking about when you say one bird at a time, one sound at a time, is there are like, I think 35 to 40 different warbler species that pass through the East Coast every spring and fall. Your first spring, it's not going to be easy to identify all of them unless they are in perfect light, posed exactly like they are in the field guide, and making the exact noise that you've heard. That's never the case. So what you want to do is say to yourself, okay, what one am I seeing the most, right? A lot of people, I think we mentioned the common yellow throat in the previous episode.
Witchetty,
yellow warbler. Yeah, right. The yellow warbler. Sweet, 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 sweet. I'm so sweet. Yeah. Those two are pretty common. Once you learn those, then it's just a matter of comparison. It's that old like Sesame Street song, one thing's not like the other. And you say, okay, I see something that looks like a yellow warbler, kind of, but it's got more streaking and it's got like rufous cap, right? It's twerking, right? It's palmwort. Or, you find something else and it's a little bit bigger than a warbler, but it's like super loud in the forest. It's got a like rufous stripe on its head. It's a little chunky thing and it's hopping around the leaves. It might be an oven bird. So really start where you're seeing the common birds and learn those, and it'll make it easier because at the very least you'll say that thing is something I've never seen before. And now the fun starts. Now the pictures and the bird guide and like texting your buddy like, what in the world is this? All that is the fun part.
It is. And that's how you identify birds. One bird at a time. It all kind of comes together. You're like, well, I know what this looks like. It wasn't that one, but it was kind of similar. It had this, it had that. And you kind of start to work your way through it. The next thing you know, you figured out another one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, put it in the bag. Put it in the bag.
It's so cool. And just know that they're going to come when they come.
That's right. And it's so, I am so excited for folks because there's just a whole new cohort of new birders this spring that have never experienced a spring migration wherever they are.
Yes.
I guess in the northern hemisphere, a spring migration. So yeah, really, really, really excited for folks. And I think we gave people just about everything they needed to at least get started.
Yeah. If you need a bird person, we're here for you.
That's right.
Oh, man, this has been a good one. I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the Bird Joy podcast. We hope you enjoyed learning and exploring the world of birding with us. Bunch of upcoming spring events. If you want to know what we got going on, check out the BIPOC Birding Club website at bipocbirdingclub.com.
That is right. And until next time, my bird nerd homies, In Color Birding Club is heating up for the spring. If you want to know what we have going on, you can find out on our calendar at incolorbirding.org or Instagram at In Color Birding Club.
And just never forget, please share, subscribe, and shout out the pod to all your fellow birders. Help us spread a little bird joy. We will also list all those different resources we talked about. Those tools will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to go and check out all these different things. I know we threw a lot at you, but just get started. Grab your binoculars, whatever that budget may be. Don't got a budget, show up, let your community support you, borrow some binoculars, learn, get yourself started, download maybe the Merlin app, check out Cornell Lab of Ornithology and all the different online resources they have, pick a field guide and shoot us some notes and let us see if we can help identify all those amazing birds that you all are seeing this spring.
All right, homie.
All right,
peace,
brother.
brother. Until the next one.